Hey folks, Malforian here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about the 18th development diary for Grey Eminence, which is all about trade. It is part 1, so next month we're going to get obviously part 2 of the trade dev diaries. I was kind of hoping for like combat or units this month, but I'll take trade. It's going to be interesting to look through this, especially if any of you play like Victoria 3, I guess is the most recent example of a game that had a lot of trade in it, so we'll kind of see how this plays out against that. Let me know what you think in the comments down below as always. And we're just going to get straight into it. So, yep, today's edition we're going to be talking about trade, the crown jewel of Grey Eminence economic simulation, a process that transforms an otherwise static world into disparate populations and goods into a massive, interconnected network that ebbs and flows like a living organism. So, as they've always said, I think pretty much since the game was announced, trade and like how these systems work are kind of like the backbone of the game. It's really what they've spent a lot of time and effort in. So it's going to be interesting to see how well they've done with that, obviously. So here we go, markets first. The fundamental unit of the trade system is the market. By default, a market is composed of all the tiles owned by a country in a single geographic province. Those of you who have read our previous dev diaries will notice that this is the same definition we've used for our political provinces, and that's right. In 1356, markets and political provinces are one and the same. So yeah, they have covered obviously how the politics side of the game works. If this is your first video here, I've covered all the dev diaries so far. There'll be a link at the end to the playlist so you can catch up if you're new to the game and kind of wondering what it's all about. Each market has a market capital from which all the connections originate, and they're going to cover some more about that later, and a stockpile of every trade good in the game, including goods that cannot be produced locally. So I guess it's just going to show like these are all the goods that are currently available in the world. Even if you have none, you'll still see them in the list. Once per month, each market resolves the consumption and production requests of its constituent tiles by either drawing from or filling up its stockpile of trade goods. This process happens in 2 steps. 1, the essential consumption and building production, and 2, discretionary consumption. So just basically saying when it kind of tallies up the end of the month, it'll even it out. You know, if you've got an excess, I guess you'll trade that away. If you're short of what's like desperately needed, you'll import things automatically, I guess. They might cover that further down. We'll have a look and see what they say. All requests are fulfilled proportionally. For example, if a single market has 100 food in its stockpile, but its population and buildings request 200 and 300 respectively, each request will only be filled 20%. So it kind of shares it out between all the buildings. It doesn't give everything to the population and the buildings get nothing. It kind of shares it out between all of them. I think that's what it means anyway. Continuing this example, since there will be no food left in the stockpile, 0% of discretionary food requests will be fulfilled because there isn't any spare, basically. Discretionary just means all the base requirements are done, and the discretionary is like just the excess. I imagine it does something, maybe it makes people happier because there's like more food or something. By delaying discretionary consumption, we ensure that a population with enough money won't starve or be left without fuel until shortages become so widespread that it affects production as well. Additionally, this will make production more resilient to sudden spikes in discretionary spending, preventing, for example, an army returning home with loot from starving its local industry of imports and breaking supply chains due to their newfound lavishness. That's pretty cool. So they're going to come back with loot and just be like, hey, I'm going to spend it all. But yeah, I think that's saying basically, because it evens it between both, you're not going to have like 1 month you've got enough to fully cover both, and then the next month, if you only had enough to cover, you know, the population side of things, it doesn't just take everything from the business side and basically, you know, put it all to the population. I believe that's what it means. So it's kind of a bit more smooth. You're not going to have like weird things where 1 month your buildings basically have nothing and the next month they have everything, and it's kind of like chop and changing. This is a bit more kind of smooths out those peaks and troughs basically a little bit, because otherwise I suppose if your population always got the most, which, you know, it'd be kind of cool if there was an option to change it to that, so you always prioritized your population first. And there might be, I might be reading this wrong, but I think that's what it means from what they're saying here. It will kind of even it out between the two, so, you know, neither of them sees crazy spikes in availability or not, depending on how things happen. So the market UI might look intimidating at a glance. It does look pretty intimidating, but it gives you all the information you might need about what's going on in a given market, with additional breakdowns on hover for most numbers. So just say you can like hover over these numbers in game and it will do a pop-up, I guess, giving you a bit more information, a bit more context. Selecting any particular row in the UI creates a relevant market overlay. Oh, that's pretty cool. So again, if you pressed on, I guess this is wool? Is this wool? Cotton? Maybe it's cotton. You'd hover over this and it would give you more information about cotton. No, sorry, if you clicked into it, it'll give you more information on cotton, maybe like worldwide, how it's doing and things like that. And then they're just saying this is obviously a current UI. They're revisiting it all the time, so it might change on launch, but that's currently how it looks. I don't think it looks too bad, actually. Originally, I don't know, I quite liked the UI, but I wasn't sold on it, whereas now it's actually looking really nice. I don't know if they've like sharpened up the colors or just they've done another pass on it, obviously, and I'm actually quite liking how it looks now. It looks really cool. So yeah, anyway, this is Thrace. So yeah, it shows your imports, exports, the trade balance, obviously the deficit or not between the two. Production, then consumption. I guess this is how much you're producing, but then also how much consumption as a whole. And then the local balance in Thrace is minus. So I guess they're consuming more than they're producing. So I guess they're importing stuff. Oh no, yeah, that makes sense actually. Yeah, it links to this top one. Yeah, they are. They're importing more than they export. And then down here, they're also producing less than they're consuming. I guess it could vary anyway, depending on what kind of industry you have. You could have some tiles or some markets specialized in something, so that might make sense anyway. They might be consuming less but producing. I imagine if there's like a smaller population, but like you've upgraded factories and things like that, you could be producing way more than you actually consume. But again, we won't really know until later on. And then these are the external trade partners, I guess. So I'm not going to try and guess who these are. I don't think they're actually set countries at the moment. It kind of looks like it's the Byzantines, but obviously it's Thrace, so I would have thought that would be internal anyway. But I think they're just generic at the moment. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. And then this is obviously their trade. So I guess the top one is importing and then exporting. Yeah, importing, yeah, because that's costing you gold, and exporting is giving you gold. And then internal trade, obviously within your empire, I guess, minus 92 and plus 87. So basically all the way around Thrace is kind of importing. It's costing more than it's producing as a market, but that might be for a variety of reasons. These are obviously all the trade goods that are here. So yeah, cotton, I guess. I'm not sure what this is, if I'm honest. This is obviously clothes. Oh, this is cotton here. Maybe this is wool. This is cotton, and this is probably silk, fabric. Probably silk, I guess. The like global price and how much it's changed. And then how much stockpile you've got, the balance. I guess they're importing clothes, which would make sense, I guess. If you're not making clothes, you're probably importing them. And then, oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, they're not making any, but they're consuming too. So yeah, and they must have had a little stockpile, I guess, because they have none on import and none on export. So I guess they just had some. Oh no, yeah, it says right here. This is also the first time I'm looking at this UI. I like doing these dev diaries as like sit down, give it a quick read, and then kind of look at it more in detail with everyone. So you get like my first impressions, I guess, of the dev diaries each time. So yeah, they have a stockpile of 14s. They must have imported some previously or just made some, I guess, or maybe even stolen them in a war or something. And then they're gradually working that away, and then I guess they'll import it afterwards. As you can see here with whatever this is, cotton, I think, they consumed one and they imported one to cover that cost. So yeah, this looks pretty good. I think at a glance, it's good. It shows you everything you need. Shows you the balance, production, consumption, import, export in one screen. Shows you the price change. I guess this is 900% silk. So I guess it was 1 gold before, and it's gone up, or 1.1 gold, whatever the maths would be. And I think this works out quite nice. Shows you everything at a glance, as it said, but you can click into them to get more information. I like this screen. I think it's really good, actually. It could probably be like condensed a little bit. There's a bit of gaps here that you probably don't need, but overall, I'm happy with this. Let me know what you think in the comments. Of course, the reason for Marcus isn't merely to match supply and demand locally, but rather to resolve local imbalances by importing and exporting goods from other markets they have a connection with in order to turn a profit. This is where logistics comes in. While we assume that all tiles within a single market can function as a single economic unit, at least in the order of a single month, different markets require connection in order to trade with other kind of regions, different tiles, internally or externally. And then they're just going to cover how that works. The most basic type of connection, and the only one we will cover today, is overland trade. So we're not going to hear anything about ports, shipping, or anything like that. I suppose actually with the time frame of this, no, there won't be air trade by the time the game ends. This connection is automatically established between a market and all its neighbours. For each such connection, the fastest paths between each market is used. Notably, the path accounts for terrain, climate, and infrastructure, so it might not be the geographically shortest one. Oh, that's cool. So it's actually going to take into account like the way. Think of it if you've ever played Civilization. How much kind of like a tile costs to move a unit. It's going to kind of work like that. So it's not necessarily going to be as the crow flies, like a straight line. There's mountains in the way. I guess if you've built roads and things like that, it's going to take that route instead. So that's cool to see. They've obviously put a lot of work into that. Infrastructure is one of the main ways you can interact with the logistics system. Building up roads, there we go, allows you to direct the path through which trade will flow, which you'll definitely want to keep out of enemy hands. Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, so I guess if you have a lot of like border counties and things like that, you could build a road that kind of goes a bit more into your territory and then back out again, and it would probably be faster than the non-road part. So trade would basically work through that road instead. So yeah, there's going to be some strategy into how that works. Additionally, infrastructure greatly reduces the transport costs of moving goods. Makes sense. Obviously a lot quicker by road, and then later on by rail, as they'll go into. Our design departs from other grand strategy games, since we do not artificially limit the volume of trade that can flow through a connection due to its infrastructure. Instead, we rely on the profit formula to balance the amount of goods that are profitable to move in a single month. For example, a player-led Russia might try to build up its eastern frontiers centuries before the invention of railroads. That's going to be a bad idea. But such an endeavour would require an exceptional profit margin to make carting goods across Eurasia by horse profitable. So yeah, they're saying you can basically trade however you want. Well, use these connections however you want, but obviously before railroads, the distance, the kind of terrain is going to make things like super impractical. But if you can build something up well enough, it could be profitable still. You know, you could still make something profitable, even if it's crazy long distance, just because maybe the item's in short supply, maybe you're the only place that has it at the time, and you're still making loads of money, even though it's crazy expensive to actually get that good moved. So again, that's cool. They're not just saying, look, nah, you can't do that, it's too far, it's too long, it's too difficult. They're saying, hey, you can do it, but it's going to be a bad time for you. So again, giving you player choice. In all these games, I always like it when they give you player choice. Is it a bad idea? Yes, but I might want to do it. So let me do it, and I'll suffer the consequences. You don't need to worry about it. And then speaking of railroads, they provide a unique mechanic that changes the way markets are structured. Any of your neighboring provinces connected by railroad automatically become part of a single unified market. So yeah, this is saying, so before railroads, all the counties I think are kind of independent and will trade between each other and things like that. But once you have railroads, it starts unifying. I guess you can kind of see that here. This might be what they're talking about. It kind of starts unifying your market into one place. So I guess in the end, again, if we use their example of Russia, in the end you could just have the Russian market rather than, as we saw in this one up here, this was just the Thrace market, just Thrace. This is what Thrace is doing, and it's interacting with all the other regions around it, but this is just Thrace on its own. And then as you get railroads going, it starts unifying that into, this is basically the country in the end, I imagine, once you build enough railroads, which makes sense. That's basically how it worked in real life. So again, it's an awesome departure from other games that I like. I like this. It sounds cool. And then as they go on here, thus, once you've unlocked railroads and start building them, you can create arbitrarily large overland markets, greatly simplifying your internal logistics. Going back to our previous example with Russia, even with roads stretching from Moscow to Vladivostok, I apologize for butchering that name, goods will take many months to flow from one city to the other, as there were provinces between them. Railroad connection would not only reduce the transport cost significantly, obviously it's by rail, it's way cheaper, but also all constitute provinces part of the same market, allowing goods to move in a single month. Oh, yeah, that is a cool kind of side effect of this. So as they're saying, because they're separate markets, the goods have to travel between the two markets, even though they're within your realm. So it's going to take a long time. Once you unify your realm using railroads, it basically just well, I guess not instantaneously, but within the same calendar month, it will just move between the two places. So it doesn't say how long the move would take using roads. I guess, as it says, actually it says many months, so maybe it takes 4 or 5 months. But once you've connected them by rail, it's just done. That month, it's moved. So obviously way more efficient, way cheaper. So you're going to want to get to railroads as soon as you can, because the kind of bonuses from having it are just crazy by the looks of it. Really, really good. But again, historically correct. Railroads change so much stuff that it's cool to see that's how it works in the game as well. The current logistics overlays, a lot of room for improvement. As I said in the video where they showed off the trailer, I like this map view, but it is crazy. It looks like the Matrix or something. Currently, all connections are drawn the same. In the future, we'll scale the width of connection to the volume of trade going through it, while its colour will signify the level of infrastructure. And that's actually a really cool idea. So these lines at the moment, they're all just the same size. You wouldn't know, looking at this screen, where the trade was going through most, but they're saying it will, expand the size of the link. And I think the colour will signify the level of infrastructure. Oh, it will change colour. So I guess if you're in the Blue Horde, if you have railways, I guess these connections will be, say, yellow. But if you're in, this land up here and you only have roads, maybe it's like I don't know, green, and if you've got none, it'll be, you know, a different color, just white maybe. And so, again, at a glance, you can kind of see how good your connections are, what the other connections are, I guess. I wonder if you'll have to do some kind of spying to see what the connections are outside of your realm. It'd be interesting to see when they cover that. And then obviously it says the connections will get bigger the more trade is going through there, which again is another strategic element. If you're thinking of doing a war, maybe you'd look at this and say, okay, we're thinking of attacking Anding down here. Oh, like loads of trade is going through it from the east to the west. If I take that land and I take that trade node, maybe I get loads more money from that. I'm disrupting trade across the world. Again, that'd be cool to see if they cover that next time. If you take that port, they did mention this last time. Taking significant trade nodes can affect other things. You know, if you've got like basically the Silk Road, if you come in and take one of the major parts of it, how much can you disrupt that trade node, and how much trade is going through to the west or the east, and you know how that would affect other realms. I wonder if you can just like block it off and say that's it. I don't want any more trade going through here, and just totally block it off. I guess it would just reroute a different way, but again, that would be slower. It could affect people around you. So all cool things to think about. And then pricing. A logistics-based trade system will be incomplete without realistic pricing to drive it. After all, it is price that determines profit, and it's profit that spurs the movement of goods. We won't go into the pricing formula and the actors that are involved in it just yet. That'll be covered in another dev diary, I guess, next month. But for now, we can confirm that the price of goods in each market is determined primarily, but not exclusively, by supply and demand. I mean, that's just obvious. That's how every trade system basically works. Not a shocker. Oh, there we go. But we thought it was well worth putting in writing. Again, that's how the world works, supply and demand for the most part. They're just saying that's basically how it's going to work in game, which makes sense. And then modability. Again, we won't cover modability all the way here, but as always, they're building the game to be super moddable. So if you've got crazy ideas of things that can be in the game, you can mod it in, and it's all going to be really, really cool and really easy to do. So if you're interested in that, read this. That's the dev diary for this month. The next one is going to be on April 1st. There's not going to be an April Fool's joke. It's just when that Saturday is. The dev diaries are every first Saturday of a month. So that's just when the next one is. And it's going to cover, obviously, Trade Part 2. So we'll see what they are going to talk about there. Let me know in the comments down below. Do you like what you've seen so far? I think it's all looking fantastic. Some really cool systems that aren't in other games that I can think of. If there are other games that have systems like this, do let me know. Except for Victoria 3. I know about that game, because I'm always looking for games that have like trade and countries in it that work a bit more like this. So I'd be super happy if there's a game out there that maybe I've just not seen. If you've enjoyed the video, hit like. If you're new here and you're wondering what Grey Eminence is, I've got a playlist with all the previous dev diaries. I cover historical and strategy games on the channel, so subscribe if that's your kind of thing. But we're going to leave it there. I'll see you next time.